According to historiographical tradition, the Edict of Milan is a letter issued by Emperors Licinius and Constantine I in 313, granting freedom of worship to Christians and ending centuries of persecution. On December 6, 2012, Cardinal Angelo Scola, Archbishop of Milan, stated that in a certain sense with the Edict of Milan, the two dimensions we call today religious freedom and secularism of the state appeared for the first time in history. While this assertion may spark debate, this Edict of Tolerance remains a significant text in the history of humanity. Before the Edict of Milan, a period of relative peace for Christians. In the 1st and 2nd centuries, Christianity was largely tolerated within the Roman Empire. Contrary to popular belief, there were no empire-wide witch hunts orchestrated by emperors. The major recorded persecutions were under Nero, linked to the Great Fire of Rome in 64, which led to the martyrdom of Peter and Paul, and the Lion persecution of 177, a more localized event whose complexities remain challenging for historians to fully decipher. Additionally, local persecutions are noted in the letters of Pliny the Younger and Tertullian. However, even in these instances, Roman governors did not systematically hunt Christians. Only those who were formally accused and refused to renounce their faith faced trial. In Rome, Christians were often viewed with suspicion, as reflected in the writings of Tacitus and Pliny. Nonetheless, during the Pax Romana, emperors generally displayed clementia, mercy, toward Christians willing to recant their beliefs. This period of relative tolerance would eventually give way to more structured policies with the rise of later emperors and finally the transformation brought by the Edict of Milan. Persecutions, a response to the crisis of the 3rd century. The second half of the 3rd century witnessed a significant escalation in the persecution of Christians. The persecution under Maximinus Thrax, though limited, was not the focus of this intensifying period. A turning point came with Emperor Decius in 249, whose brief but violent persecution was tied to his conservative political agenda. His vision for restoring imperial authority included a return to traditional Roman values and reverence for the old gods, whom he believed were punishing Rome with political, social, and economic crises, as well as military defeats. The process was straightforward. Individuals were summoned to perform a sacrifice or burn incense in honor of the Roman gods to obtain a certificate of compliance. Those who refused were imprisoned and subjected to pressure designed to compel their compliance. Many capitulated, becoming known as lapsi, Christians who renounced their faith. The issue of lapsi created division within the Christian community, even among some church leaders. Notably, Decius' edict did not explicitly target Christians. Rather, it required participation in state rituals, regardless of religious beliefs. The second major persecution under Valerian, 257 to 258, explicitly targeted Christians as a response to ongoing crises, including military losses to the Persians and a devastating plague. His measures were more severe, banning Christian worship gatherings and demanding that Christian leaders acknowledge the Roman gods under threat of exile. When these measures proved insufficient, even stricter policies were implemented. Valerian's capture by the Persians ended his campaign against Christians, and his son Gallienus issued an Edict of Tolerance, seeking to restore peace. This led to the so-called Little Peace of the Church, a temporary respite before the more comprehensive and intense persecution that would follow later in the empire's history. Christianity, a religion misaligned with Roman customs. Christian persecution in the Roman Empire was not solely a response to political crises, but also rooted in religious conflicts. Christianity's refusal to participate in sacrificial rites, a cornerstone of Rome's divine order, posed a profound challenge. Sacrifices were seen as essential to maintaining the favor of the gods and ensuring societal stability. The primary offense was not so much a rejection of the imperial cult but rather a failure to partake in civic rituals, which became particularly problematic within the military after Caracalla's Edict of 212 CE granted Roman citizenship to many Christians. The martyrdom of Centurion Marcellus exemplifies the tension between Christian beliefs and Roman military expectations. According to Slaselmi, the events unfolded on July 21, 295, during the celebration of the emperor's Epiphany, the anniversary of Diocletian's declaration as Jovius, son of Jupiter, and Maximian as Herculeus, son of Hercules. In the city of Tangier, Under the command of Prefect Fortunatus, soldiers gathered to honor the emperors with sacrifices. Marcellus, a centurion of the Trajan legion, rejected these rituals by throwing down his military belt and declaring, "I am a soldier of Jesus Christ, the eternal King." He cast aside his weapons and proclaimed, "From now on, I refuse to serve your emperors or worship your gods of wood and stone, deaf and mute idols." His act of defiance was a direct challenge to Roman authority, stating, "It is impossible for a Christian to serve in the secular militia." Since soldiers were required to worship the emperors during such ceremonies, Marcellus was charged with desertion and blasphemy. This incident highlights the inherent incompatibility between Christianity and the religious political framework of Rome. The Christian rejection of traditional rituals undermined the Pax Deorum, the peace maintained through proper worship of the gods, which was considered vital to the empire's survival. The persistence of Christians in defying these customs threatened to unravel the very fabric of Roman society and religious harmony. The Great Persecutions. The most extensive persecutions of Christians were instituted by Emperor Diocletian in 303 CE, and continued until 312 CE, marking the longest and deadliest period of Christian suppression in Roman history. This era witnessed widespread violence, with victims numbering in the thousands. While this overview does not delve into the individual policies of each member of the Tetrarchy, it is important to note the pivotal resignation of Diocletian, which intensified the struggles among competing imperial factions. The persecutions began with efforts to purge Christians from the military, as exemplified by the martyrdom of Saint Marcellus, and escalated into broader campaigns across the empire. The severity of these actions varied significantly depending on the personal dispositions of each tetrarch and their enforcement of imperial edicts. Some regions experienced relentless brutality, while others saw more leniency. The context behind these persecutions reveals the motivations of the tetrarchs, whose primary aim was religious conformity. Diocletian's extensive reforms to the Roman Empire heightened tensions with Christians. His ideological framework, which sacralized the authority of the two Augusti as divine descendants of Jupiter, rendered Christian non-compliance intolerable. The refusal of Christians to venerate traditional gods was perceived as a direct threat to the stability of the state. An oracle from Apollo at Miletus, which Diocletian revered, further justified the harsh measures. This theological stance foreshadowed the later political philosophy of the Christian empire articulated by Eusebius of Caesarea. For Diocletian, suppressing Christianity was not merely a defensive measure, but also a strategy to unify the empire under a single religious faith, thereby securing the continuity of imperial rule for his successors. The Edict of Sardica. On April 30, 311, Galerius issued an Edict of Tolerance in Nicomedia, commonly referred to as the Edict of Sardica. Although discussions regarding policy toward Christians had taken place earlier at the Conference of Carnuntum in 308, this edict was proclaimed unilaterally by Galerius without consulting the other three tetrarchs, Constantine, Licinius, and Maximinus Dea. The decree declared the end of religious persecutions and granted freedom of worship throughout the Roman Empire. Lactantius, a contemporary Christian writer, painted Galerius as a relentless persecutor, claiming he had even influenced Diocletian's harsh policies. However, other accounts of martyrdom do not confirm such a dominant role for Galerius. His motivations for issuing the edict stemmed largely from the failure of persecution to suppress the growth of Christianity. According to historian Arnaldo Marconi, the edict was as much a political message to the other tetrarchs as it was a proclamation to the general populace. Galerius sought to avoid civil wars while also managing the persistent threat from the Sassanid Persian Empire. The edict marked an ideological shift within the tetrarchy, reflecting a more pragmatic approach to governance. Galerius, a faithful interpreter of Diocletian's vision, acknowledged that allowing Christians to pray for the empire's well-being could be beneficial. The edict specified that governors would receive detailed instructions regarding its implementation, signaling a more structured and cautious transition toward religious tolerance within the Roman state. The Edict of Milan, often highlighted in Christian historiography for ideological reasons, has been attributed with greater importance than it merits in its historical context. Following his victory at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, championed the freedom of Christians, and was credited with issuing this landmark decree. However, the Edict of Milan was essentially an implementation decree following the earlier Edict of Sardica, and technically, it was not even an edict. In the winter of 312 to 313, Constantine had already written letters to the governor of Africa and the bishop of Carthage, ordering the restitution of property confiscated from the Christian clergy, actions directly influenced by the Sardican edict. The so-called Edict of Milan, in truth, was a joint circular letter from Emperors Constantine I and Licinius. It was the result of their meeting in Milan and was addressed to the governor of Bithynia, eventually published in Nicomedia on June 13, 313. This circular letter was posted publicly, enabling Lactantius to copy it into his On the Deaths of the Persecutors and Eusebius of Caesarea to provide another version in his ecclesiastical history. Significant additions distinguished it from the Sardican edict, including the restoration of confiscated books and properties to Christians and the removal of municipal obligations for clergy members. Ultimately, this document symbolized the final cessation of Christian persecutions in the Roman Empire. The publication of the letter followed Licinius's victory over Maximinus Daia at the Campus Urginus near Adrianople on April 30, 313, and reflected the alliance between Licinius and Constantine that dismantled the Tetrarchy. However, the two rulers held different perspectives. Licinius saw it as the culmination of a process, while Constantine viewed it as the beginning of a new religious era. Constantine's involvement in early church councils demonstrated his active role in shaping Christian policy, though it would not be until the end of the 4th century that Christianity became the official state religion. While the Edict of Milan was less transformative than traditional narratives suggest, it granted Christians the right to worship freely, and has retained a significant place in collective memory. Its enduring legacy is evident in the prominence it continues to hold, including references in educational curricula, such as France's 6th grade history-geography syllabus.